What's going on, guys? Caden from 86 Speed, and today is a very special day. We are going to be installing an HKS supercharger on a customer's BRZ. Now, this is not like any other supercharger. This is a centrifugal supercharger. Like you guys have seen on our GR86, that is a root supercharger, so it sits on top of the intake manifold, or it replaces the intake manifold, but it sits on top of the engine, kind of like the V8 from Fast and Furious. So this one kind of works like a turbocharger because it does have an intercooler and it does have a blower, so it works a little bit differently. We're not going to get too deep into the differences of the supercharger kits, but this is the HKS GT2 kit that we sell on our site. I'll leave a link down in the description. But yeah, today is going to be part one of just installing the kit onto the BRZ. Now, this BRZ is fitted with some nice bits like the Cusco strut brace, the parent intake, and some various bits in the engine bay. He's also sitting on Tane coilovers with some Gramlite 57 CRs. Very nice. So suspension and tire wise, I think he's pretty set up for the supercharger kit. You don't really need anything else. So besides the supercharger kit, we are setting him up with an Ecutech software kit. If you guys haven't watched the Ecutech buyer's guide, I'll leave a link right here. And besides that, we are also installing a 3-bar map sensor and 750cc injectors. So without further ado, guys, let's get the supercharger kit on the BRZ. So to install the HKS supercharger requires a little bit of work. If you plan on installing this kit yourself, you need to do some cutting for proper fitment. Luckily, the installation manual is very detailed and easy to follow. First thing we did was remove the bumper, getting the 10mm bolts on top and pop clips along the bottom and the sides. Next, we removed the intake, which was simple enough, and Thomas removed the radiator support. We then removed both headlights as well as the brackets, which was also held on by 10mm bolts along with some pop clips. I removed the washer fluid reservoir because the kit requires you to modify that as well. Alright, so far we took out the passenger headlight out with the bracket. Right now we're getting off the front crash bar. We're getting off the driver's side headlight bracket. We removed the washer fluid reservoir, removed the rad support, as well as the intake. As Thomas was removing the crash bar, I went ahead and took off the serpentine belt, as well as the alternator and alternator bracket. Now, do not forget to disconnect the battery as we did prior to the install, because that is very important when you're working with anything along with the alternator. Both the alternator bracket and bash bar will need to be modified for the supercharger kit. Now that we have all the parts off the car, we can now cut them to fit the kit. What you'll need is a cutoff wheel, some spray paint, and a Dremel. The hardest part of this process was cutting the alternator bracket, as it was thick aluminum, so I would recommend a Sawzall to help speed up the process. Now, I wasn't able to be at the shop for the rest of the process of the install, so huge thank you to Thomas for doing the install and recording the entire thing.
So what we have to do to install this, you have to, this hole is already drilled. It's one of the holes for the plastic front mount. So that bracket goes there, bolt here. This is a long bracket that goes to the oil cooler spacer. It goes to the bracket that installs underneath the bumper support. There's no way to really get your bolts in there. You could try. I was unsuccessful with the magnet I had at the time to go through here and get the bolt in. But what I ended up doing is just drilling out some holes so that I can put the bolt in right there. But there's a mount that goes there. This mount, you have to go through the hole here. It was big enough, easy enough to get in. And then on the bottom, mounts are like this. So one of these holes are already there, and the other you had to drill, and it's in their instructions. That hole was already there, so just put the bolts through there, tighten it, snug it down, and then I mounted the intercooler, and then you put in that bracket. This all tightens it down, and then these are all solid. That's how you install the intercooler and the supercharger fluid cooler, oil cooler. So next, according to the instructions, we're going to cut the hose 1050 millimeter, 880 millimeter. I'll convert that over using Google and doing it in freedom units, and the corrugated tubing, and then we'll put on the lines, the hoses, where it needs to go, and the correlated tubing. Okay, for page 19, you put in the bumper support back on. So on this, there's spacers in there. And I already marked the spacers. I measured them up and marked them in the beginning. On this one, all four are the same. Put the 5mm cap there, 12mm hex heads. Other locations. On this side, there's a bracket. So this spacer's 13mm compared to the 15mm of the other spacers, and the small 5mm cap head goes there. The bracket needs to be vertical, and then the three 12mm bolts, hex bolts. So for the washer bottle, we had to modify inside there like the instructions say. The mount that goes in there needs to be widened just a little bit, 4mm it says, elongate it, because we have to put this spacer in here to pull it back. It still mounts up and everything properly like it's supposed to. Then we run the hose back up in there. Okay, as instructed, after we're done with washer bottle, move on to the horn and the wiper control relay. Tells you to put it in there. There's going to be a hole. You'll see it right above the mount there. I just flipped the horn around on its bracket because horn was facing out this way because it's upside down. The temperature sensor goes onto the bracket. It sits intercooler that mounts up there, and then you have to remove this bolt. Is usually here, hanging up here, and this plug right here was on top. So you unplug it, you need to pull this out, this tab, because that tab was in there. So next is going to be installing the alternator mount that we shaved. I have access to a belt grinder, so I cleaned it up to make it look better. So we'll mount this up, start on the supercharger install. Okay, so once we get the supercharger on the bracket, there is a small bolt on the bottom. It tells you that it needs to be put in beforehand. This bolt right here needs to be put in. That's it right there, because it tells you once bracket's installed, you can't put it on. That's not true in my case because it fell out. So all this stuff's pretty self-explanatory. It's not very difficult at all. There's a bolt under here, kind of difficult because the hose is in the way. For me, I put the bracket on, got it all lined up, and then I was able to fish that bolt with a 10mm head. It goes where the dipstick tube mount was. So it's all tightened up now. Belt ran through. All that was pretty easy. Okay, now we did the routing of the lines. So you install the tank, bottom line, bottom hose goes through by the AC condenser and radiator, and it goes to the far side. You can't really mess this up because one nipple is bigger than the other. So this is, I believe, the 8mm. And it goes to the one that's going to be on the passenger side, right side sitting in the car, left side looking at it. And it goes down as it ties to the radiator, just like it shows in the instructions. The top one comes up underneath the radiator support, comes around out here into the reservoir. Bottom of the reservoir goes into the filter. Filter comes around, comes out, comes around, and then up into the 10mm nipple there. Right side looking at it, left side inside the vehicle, driver's side. You also use a bolt because you have to cut that off, and that's where that mounts to. Okay, so got the intake on. Couple problems that I ran into, not big deal. It says it was two hex flange bolt, 20mm long, but there wasn't. The only thing 20mm long were these hex bolts here, cap bolts. These were too long, so I couldn't use those. The bolts that go up to here, I just went ahead and put in here. So fix that. That's the stud and that comes with it. There's supposed to be a reducer in there. I'm not really sure. Some little restriction piece. I put it in because it told me to. I feel like you should probably leave it out, but instructions say put it in there, so I put it in there like it said. That one right there. I'm not sure what happens if you leave it out. Maybe you can make more power with it later. He didn't have a stock box, so I couldn't put the stock box in there. What I did was cut his pairing down, expanded on the edge because I couldn't get it to slip on. So I just grabbed some pliers and bent it up so that it made an edge because I don't have a roller. And then put this in there. It's not going anywhere. So I at least have an intake. Supercharger is going to heat up the air a lot more than the hot air that's coming in here. But that's what he's going to have to use for right now. Okay, intercooler pipe's all on. It's pretty straightforward. It's a little tight there, but not touching that bad. There's a little gap. It's not pressed up on it. It's just touching. Hose is not kinked or anything. It's touching up here, but I guess that's why you have to trim it. Everything else is tightened up. Just need the blow-off valve, and then I'll run it. After that, I will be putting in injectors. I believe the customer wanted 750s. All right, so blow-off's pretty easy. There's a hose that you take off that's on this back side. Remove that hose there, factory hose. Put this on, it has a T for the blow-off valve right there. The checklist to go through. I'm gonna go through each one before I start it up.
Alright, so just like that, the install for the BRZ is finally done using the HKS version 2 blower kit. So in the next episode, we'll take this car out for a rip. And like I said, for this video, we're just showing you how to install it and the process and unboxing the kit. We hope you enjoyed this video, and the next episode, stay tuned. We're gonna take this car out for a rip. And with that, guys, we'll see you in the next one.